Lab number 73. In this lab, we'll create a database to store menu and orders. We'll use a Cloudant service on Bluemix to do that. And our database will be actually a NoSQL database. And our documents inside will have a JSON format. Afterwards, we will try to fetch data from this database and display it in our mobile application. So first of all, you should already complete the lab number 19, in which you should create a Bluemix account. So if you still do not have the Bluemix account, please follow that lab and make sure you will complete it before going with this one. So first of all, let's open the browser and navigate into the Bluemix website. You can use actually the icon from the fastbar access, and you need to log in. Just fill your credentials and click sign in. So after logging in, you will be redirected to dashboard page. And what we need to do is to go to catalog and search for a Cloudant service. So it's located under data and analytics section. And what you should do here is just click on this service and then click create button. It will prepare, actually create a service for you that you will be able to see in a dashboard. And after it will create a service, we will need to actually go to the console, to the Cloudant console, to create databases. So service was created. Let's launch the console. As you can see, there are no databases yet, of course. So let's create our first one and call it Canteen menu. So here we will have menus. And let's also go back and create one more. And let's call it Canteen orders. So in this database, we will have a list of orders that will be created using our point of sales. Next thing we need to do is to go back to Canteen menu and create our first document. This will be done by clicking on plus and then selecting new doc. Next thing we need to do is to copy this ID, and this is important, and to open a folder called lab73 files, either on your PC, either on Dropbox. So in this file, you're interested in this folder, you're interested in a file called Canteen menu JSON, and I will use the text editor to open it. Here we will have the menu. Actually, there are three different types of menus. So breakfast menu, then you have a lunch and dinner menu. Each menu has the items with specific name, category, details, and image. Image is actually right here. So this is the actually image that's encoded in base64. So this file may be quite heavy if you will have a lot of those, but this is the demo scenario, so it will be perfect for us. So what we need to do here is actually to pass the ID that we just copied from Cloudant here in ID section. Then select everything we have here in the file, copy, and replace everything that we have here in our Cloudant dashboard with actually the text that we copied from that file. And afterwards I can save this first document. So document saved, we can go back. And actually this menu we will be using to display in our application, specifically for breakfast, for dinner, and for lunch. You can also change the ID if you want or create other menus, but for now, in demo purposes, we will stick with this ID that was randomly generated, and we will stick with this one menu specifically provided by this text file that we used as the input source. Actually, orders database won't be touched for now because we will create orders and fill that database later on from the application itself. So for now, we finished with Cloudant, I mean with web interface, and next thing for us is actually to try to connect to it and try to fetch the data from this specific document with a menu. So let's open our studio. In our case, it's add-on text editor, which we will be using for application development in this lab series. And together with canteenPOS, we will add here another project folder, which in our case will be actually also inside the Canteen folder, and it's canteenPOS WL. So whole path looks like how my IBM Dev workspace is canteenPOS WL. This is the server-side project that we have, and inside the server-side project, what we will do is we will create an adapter. So for that, we will open a terminal right here using term package. We will open the terminal in the bottom pane, and we will navigate to canteenPOS WL and create adapter using mfp.help. So the name of our adapter will be Canteen Adapter. Type of the adapter will be HTTP, so navigation using the arrows and then use the space to select or enter to select the type. We won't need the procedures for JSON store for now, we will add them later on. So select no. And we don't need the same things for USSD, so select no. And basically the adapter will be created. So now inside the adapters folder, you can see that there is a Canteen adapter created, and we are interested in a file called Canteen XML. So this is the configuration file that should be used for configuring the adapter, I mean the domain, protocol, port, and so on. And we will need to fill that in with the properties for Bluemix Cloudant service. So in order to do that, let's go back to our browser and navigate to Getting Started materials for version 7.1. You can use the quick link from tab bar. And we will need to look for all tutorials and there to search for Cloudant. So the article that we are interested in called Integrating with Cloudant by using an adapter. So this is the article that we are particularly will be working on, and I mean working on is that we will use this article as an example of how to create and prepare our adapter. So first thing that we will need to do is to do this part with authentication. So actually authentication will need to be filled with the username and password that was generated for us using that Cloudant service. So I will copy these lines and go back to text editor and pass it somewhere here. I will also remove those things that were there in example, I mean username and the password, and we will need to copy those from our Cloudant service. So let's go back to dashboard from a Bluemix, and we will need the service credentials tab, in which you will see actually the username, password, host, port, and so on. So please use yours, of course, because those are randomly generated for your service, and they are differs from mine. So this is my username. I will just copy it and pass inside the username. And then the same with the password. And we will also need the host. So copy host from here. And pass here. So now when we fill the domain and username with the password, we will need to work on our procedures. So let's have the procedure called get menu This is something that we will start with, and we don't need anything else for now. So this will be a pretty simple adapter. I will save this XML and I will open the file called Canteen Adapter info.js. So let's go back to our web browser, to the article that describes the way how to integrate. And actually, as you can see in this example, it shows only how to add entry example, but you can look for more if you will click on download MobileFirst project. So on top of this article, it will actually go to the GitHub, and here in adapters, in Cloudant.js, which means the JavaScript adapter, and in JS file you will see all the examples like add entry or delete entry, get all entries, and so on. And we are interested right now in this get all entries function. So let's just copy everything that we have here. And replace everything that we have in this JS with the text that we just copied. Instead of this name, get all entries, as you remember, we named it get menu in XML file here. And also in this JS file, we should replace the database name with the real name of our database. So in our case, it will look like this. We'll delete this database and we'll add canteen menu. So here, instead of this all docs, which will mean that it will get all the documents, all the JSON documents inside this database, we will need to enter our ID. And if you don't remember it, you should copy it from a database right here. And this will mean that it will try using the method get to call the Cloudant service, and using the credentials that we filled in XML file, reply us with the menu. So we can save this JS file now, and we will need to test this adapter. So first of all, let's start the server. If you have it already running, it's cool. If not, you can start it with command mfp start. It will take some time. So you may notice that during the startup, it says that all adapters were successfully deployed to runtime. And this means that actually adapters were really deployed, so you don't need to do a push. We can check this by opening MFP console, by typing MFP console in a command line. So as you can see, we have here one adapter called Canteen adapter that actually will go to Bluemix, and we have our get menu procedure here. So let's go back to our editor and try to invoke our adapter. We should do it with mfp invoke. This is the simplest option to test that it actually works. So let's try. As we have now only one adapter, it automatically knows that it should call Canteen adapter, and because there is only one procedure, it will be invoking this procedure. So what it's asking now is for any specific parameters that we want to pass as an input parameter. But because our procedure doesn't expect any, we will just ignore this line, just click enter, and it will try to communicate with the Bluemix service. and as you can see, we got something in response. So response is quite long. This is probably the image, and yeah, you see that actually it responded with menu and a lot of lines. It's about images, because as I said, images are quite big. So our adapter working. I will clear this terminal window so it will make our life a bit easier. And next thing we will need to do is to actually call the same adapter and try to display some data in our real application. So let's go back to our canteenPOS main project, the UI mainly project, and we'll create new file inside the GS folder. We'll call it controllers.js. So here we will actually define our first controller. First of all, we need to say about the module. So Angular module. In our case, we have an application name called starter that was assigned by default, and here we will have starter controllers defined. So basically there won't be anything special in it. I will have just one controller for now, and let's name it something like POS controller, something like this. And for now we will need only the scope here. So let's define it. So let's do a simple login to make sure that controller are loaded. I will just type something like console log and type the name of the controller, post controller init. That's it. So when we will see this log entry, we will know that our controller actually loaded. So here inside the controller, we will need to request the menu. The proper way of this will be to create a separate thing called service. So right here inside our controller, we will just define the call to this service that will actually perform the menu request for us. So let's have something like food inside our menu, and then we will have the request. So let's call this service menu, and then we'll have the request itself. No input parameters for now needed, and we'll also need to add dependency to it, so to add a function here. So instead of having only a scope, and by the way, there are no need to add these things, we will need to add here also the menu service, and we will need to define it separately. The best option will be to create a separate file. Let's call it services. And here we'll have the same Angular module, but this time it will be starter services. And basically inside we will have our first service that we called menu. And here actually we will execute the request to Cloudant. So it will look like this: request, then we'll have a function, and here we will return the result of the request. So let's call it menu request. Actually, here we will be sending a call to a Cloudant, and then we'll have a promise, simple promise with them. Then we'll actually structure our result, or even without structuring, it will be just simple callback to send back to our control everything we got from a Cloudant. So here we can return our result, and we can actually return only response JSON. This is the default structure that we have from Worklight adapter call, so it's easier to return only this one rather than all the data in response. Of course, it won't work as simple as that, so we will need to define the parameters, and first parameter will be actually the URL that we are requesting, and this URL we will structure with real resource request. Make sure you typing it exactly the same as I am because it's case sensitive. And here in resource request, we will provide the URL, and in our case, URL will look like adapter, then the name of the adapter, it will be Canteen adapter, and then the procedure name, in our case, it will be get menu. And we also need to specify the type, in our case, it will be actually get. Just like that. And we also need to define query parameters, even if there will be none. So we'll just do the following sets query parameters. To empty string. That's it. Nothing else is actually needed here. Our service should work as supposed. So what it will actually do, it will go to our adapter, to this JS called getMenu function, and receive the response that we have here. Actually, we can simplify this. It will be a bit easier. So yeah, it will be easier just to type return and return the invocation result rather than to use this legacy code that we copied from getting started. Just like this. So it will actually call this get menu and in return receive the invocation result. So now when our services file is ready, we can go back to controller. Most probably this line of the code won't work actually just because we are not sure that this Angular code will be loaded after the initialization of work-like libraries and server connection. So there is a big chance that the resource request from services.js won't be known object, so it won't be able to access it, but let's try. So before we will actually execute it, let's open the app.js and add dependencies here to start a controller. Starter controllers, yep, and also starter services. Just like this, and we also need to open the index.html file. We will need to add a controller, so let's use it. Let's add it using ng controller directive and directly assign to body the controller that we have, post controller. And we also need to load our two files that we created. So I will do it right after app.js. So one of them, as you remember, called controllers. Second one called services. Just like that. Now we can go back to our project in a terminal window. I'm in the Ionic Cordova project created by MFP platform rather than the server project. So canteenPOS without WL, and do a push using MFP push. We actually also needed to do a push on the previous project, canteenPOS WL, because we changed the adapter, as you remember. So I will do a push here also. And navigate back to our UI Cordova project. So from here we can actually type MFP preview to open the preview in a browser and select the simple browser rendering. So it will open the page with our application in the browser. This is the page. Let's go to inspect element to check the logs, what we have here. And yes, as you see right in the beginning, just as I said, WL resource request. So basically, as I said, this is happening because we are trying to access this resource request without actually loading the libraries. So we need to make sure that the libraries are loaded, or even actually we can wait until we will have the server connection and only then perform the request. So to do that, there are quite a lot of techniques, so you have an options, but we will use one of the easiest. So we need to go to index.js file where we actually initialize the connection. So with this line, while client connect, as you remember, we were doing a server connection, and now we can actually modify it a bit. So by modification, I mean we will implement two callbacks. On success will be the first one. So here we will have the successful callback, and we also will have on failure callback. That will be called if connection failed. In both cases, we will have simple logging. So let's log in the console something like here failed to connect to MFP server. And here we will actually say that we connected to MFP server, just like this. And the additional thing that we will do in onSuccess callback, we will actually create the event and we'll fire this event that will be monitored in a controller. So when this event will be fired and when a controller with the listener will get this event, this will mean that we connected to a server and now we can perform the resource request. So let's do the following. Let's first create this event. So I will use something like custom event. Let's make it more pretty. So let's call it something like init done. And then basically we will dispatch it. I mean fire trigger or whatever you will call it, but anyway. And we'll need to provide this event name. Yep. So this will be actually dispatched only when the connection will be established, successful connection. So now we can go back to our controller and add listener. So to do that, we need to declare it. So document add event listener. Then the name of this event, in our case, it's init done. Then the function that we will call, let's call something like load menu, for example. Basically we will need to define this function. So let's create it. If everything will be successful, when this event will be dispatched, the event listener will actually get it and will call this load menu function. And here inside load menu function, we can actually perform the call to our service. And instead of such construction, it's better actually to wait for a service to reply, because it will initiate the call to a server and then from the server to Cloudant and then back, so it may take a while. And it's good to wait until we'll actually get a reply rather than display the data right away, because maybe there will be no data. So what we will do here, we will create a promise. It will look pretty simple. So let's call it somehow like data promise, something like this. And here in this data promise, we will actually do this request, like we were doing before, menu request, just like this. And then we can have the same construction as in the service, almost the same. Data promise, then actually the working with the result. So function will have the result here, and we can actually do something with it. Here is the time to assign our scope food, and instead of assigning it to all response, we can assign it to some parts, so for example dinner or breakfast menu or even lunch. So let's try with breakfast. It should work. And we also should apply changes to scope here, because otherwise everything that we just got won't be visible on the screen. Now this previous request can be removed. We have our load menu. It's cool, and we also need to display some data in our index.html file. So let's go there and create some structure here. So let's create a simple div here, which actually will be our almost repeatable list. So we'll repeat it using ng repeat. So we will be repeating the reply that we got, I mean food. Let's call the item in food something like piece in food, and actually this will repeat those pieces as many times as we have the entries in this food array. And we will need to display something inside. Let's go with the button, because at the end we will have a buttons with the food picture and description, by clicking on which we will add this item to the menu. So we'll create a button here. Let's add a bit of style, just default Ionic ones. So the class will be button, and button outline to create an outlined button. And inside it we will have a text. So let's take it actually from this array. For that I will go back to Cloudant, and I will check my entry. So here, as you can see, we have breakfast, we have also lunch and dinner menus, and each item has a name, category, detail, image, and price. So let's go with detail. So I will actually display the detail here like this, piece and detail, nothing more than that. And we can also remove this header, it's not really needed right now. So that's it. Let's push the changes and try what we actually did. Okay, so let's check it up with MFP preview. Simple browser rendering, as always. Seems like an empty page. Let's check why it is. Failed to load resource, but server connection actually was successful. Oh yeah, the link should be adapters rather than adapter. Another typo, sorry for that. So let's go back to services and change adapter to adapters and try to push once again. We can actually go back to the browser and just refresh the page. Okay, so as you can see, we even got a response from a server. We see the buttons, we see the names. This means that the call was successful. And actually somewhere here we also should see the result. Yes, response was success. So actually this is it for this. For now we done what we were supposed to do in this lab. So we will continue development of our Canteen Point of Sales in next labs, and on this step lab number 7.3 is finished. Thank you.